Republicans have been running ad after ad in every one of the special elections saying if, for example, John Ossoff wins, Nancy Pelosi wins. Now, I think there has been a great misinterpretation of why they're doing that and why it is successful and how the Democrats should respond. So some Democrats, very justifiably, have said maybe Nancy Pelosi is hurting our cause and not helping. Now this reminds me of when we said the same about Hillary Clinton and everybody said, no, Hillary Clinton doesn't have any problems, but the people love Hillary Clinton. How'd that turn out? So the people that are saying the opposite, that are saying that Nancy Pelosi is wonderful and helping, are of course people like Nancy Pelosi and all of her allies that she got money to. Anyway, so right after the Trump election, when she was asked about whether people want a new direction in the Democratic Party, since they just lost to Donald F. and Trump, and they lost the House and the Senate, let alone 69 out of the 99 state legislatures. I mean, you almost can't get a worse record of failure. She said, quote, I don't think people want a new direction. Really? Well, they have a funny way of showing it. So the evidence would seem to indicate they really want a new direction. Okay, now after the Ossoff loss, of course, Democrats declared moral victory, but actual failure yet again. They asked Pelosi again, is it time to step down? Here's her responses. Quote, I think I'm worth the trouble. Well, okay, I know, we're supposed to be with you. I'm with her. I am worth the trouble. I am worth the trouble. Why? Why are we going through the trouble just for you? Again, I do have an answer I'll share with you in a second. And then she says these incredibly haughty things like this. Everybody wants leaders. Not a lot of people want to be led. People should know when they're defeated. Yeah, I understand. Oh, please, Nancy Pelosi, lead me. I don't know what to do. No, but you see, Representative Pelosi, we're asking you to not lead us. I think you're misunderstanding the message. Okay, but why should you stay, Representative Pelosi? She says, quote, I'm a master legislator. I don't know if she knows how funny that sounds. By the way, master legislator, what have you brought to us in progressive victories? I'll wait. Progressive victories, master legislator, you lost the fight for keeping us out of Iraq spectacularly. You lost the fight to give tax cuts to the rich under George W. Bush. You lost almost every fight under George W. Bush. Where's the master legislator? Maybe I'm missing it. And then under Obama, well, we did get one thing passed, Obamacare, which they're now destroying. I'm a master legislator. Well, if you, for example, she'll say, and we're going to talk more about it in a second, oh, I've always been for single payer. I'm not for it now, but I've always been for it. Really? When have you ever fought for it? When have you ever gotten it passed, master legislator? No, you've never gotten it passed. And in fact, during the Obamacare fight, you were among the people who were like, oh, public option. No, that's a bit too much, don't you think? Oh, we have a super majority. But no, let's not do a public option. Hey, look, I didn't call you a master legislator, you did. So that puts the burden on you to prove that somehow you got these legislative victories that were amazing, that were better than expected. Where are those, Representative Pelosi? Because I don't think the American people are seeing them. When asked to further support this, she said, quote, people just flock to support me. Oh my God. I don't think that's your issue. I've got to be honest with you. But again, the same thing as Hillary Clinton, hubris. Hubris on top of hubris. Oh, I am the master legislator. I do declare you have to be with me. Flock to support me, everybody. Jesus Christ. And why does she believe these insane things that nobody else in the country believes? Every Republican runs ads against Nancy Pelosi. Do you think that's because they think Nancy Pelosi is really popular? No, they run those ads because they think Nancy Pelosi is really unpopular. But in her circle, she's got a bunch of sycophants around her who are like, oh yes, Nancy, absolutely, Nancy. You're the most master legislator we've ever seen, Nancy. So here's Emmanuel Cleaver who says, look, Cleaver has upsides too, and all these people are complicated, got upsides, downsides. But in this case, he has this incredibly annoying quote of, nobody pushed Michael Jordan into retirement. Michael Jordan won things. He won 6 championships. Where are our championships? I mean, first of all, you don't have the House. You were Speaker of the House. You're not the Speaker of the House. Therefore, you did not win. You lost, okay? But that's not the point. The point is legislative victories, policy victories. I'm still waiting for them. If this is the best they got, then you got to step aside right now. If you think this is winning and you think this is a wonderful example of legislating these last 20 years, you got to go right now. You got to go this minute. Because if this is the best we can do, that is an incredibly low bar. Then I can't have that person content with failure, filled with hubris, having all these sycophants around her going, oh, you're Michael Jordan, Nancy Pelosi, don't worry about it. Now, how about policy? Does she plan to win in the future? The answer is no. Let's take single payer as an example. New York Times reports she is resisting calls for House Democrats to run on single payer healthcare coverage and is an unapologetic pragmatist when it comes to those in her ranks who deviate from orthodoxy. You know what that means? That means single payer, we're definitely not doing it. The leader of the Democrats in the House says she promises that she will not do it. How are you going to win if you promise ahead of time that you're going to quit? And then she says that she is a pragmatist. Well, if you're a pragmatist and it led to victories, and you say, look, I promise you policy victories later, but I'm at least going to give you legislative victories, electoral victories. Well, where are those? Those don't exist either. I don't know if you know this, Nancy Pelosi. You're not Speaker of the House anymore because you lost. There is no pragmatism in failure. You can claim pragmatism if you had succeeded, but you have not. But to them, they're like, what do you mean? The money's still flowing in. We're wildly successful. No, you're not. Success is actually getting wins like in single payer. And here, in this case, you're not only refuse to fight. Did you notice the end of the sentence? She is going against those ranks who deviate from orthodoxy. So if you deviate from the establishment, that's when Nancy Pelosi's a tiger. That's when the establishment all of a sudden roars its head and goes, how dare you? You will not deviate from orthodoxy. But I'm a master legislator who's going to give us progressive victories. You just promised us that you won't even fight for progressive victories. Okay, when asked why on God's green earth won't you fight on this? Quote from Nancy Pelosi, the comfort level with the broader base of the American people is not there yet. Well, that is factually incorrect, as I'm going to show you there. But under that logic, Nancy Pelosi, the comfort level of the American people is not with you apparently. So according to your own logic, you should step aside immediately. Okay, but on to single payer. She says the comfort level is not there. A 2016 Gallup poll found that 58% of Americans favored replacing Obamacare with a federally funded healthcare system that is not going further right, that is going further left. The Washington Post reported April 2017, quote, a recent survey from the economist YouGov found that a majority of Americans support expanding Medicare to provide health insurance to every American. That is Medicare for all. But will you fight on that? No, majority of people are not there. You're wrong. You're factually incorrect. 58% say, yes, I want a government-run program. And a majority say, yes, I want Medicare for all. Can I be any more specific? But the donors don't want Medicare for all. The donors don't want you to have single payer. So Nancy Pelosi tells you it's not pragmatic. It's not that when you run those ads and you put Nancy Pelosi's picture on it, I'm a guy who does not want to run from any fights. So if I thought that they were attacking her because she's too liberal and that's what was working, I would double down. I'd send in someone even more liberal than her. And I would fight for our ideas. But that's not why it works. It works because they don't associate her with liberal, they associate her with out of touch elite establishment. And they are right. So, because if they associated her with liberal, they'd say, oh, then Medicare for all. That's the thing I like. That's very progressive. Nancy Pelosi's progressive. I like Nancy Pelosi. That's not the direction they're going in. So what is she good at? And another ally, Steve Cohen, and a guy I like, again, these guys are complicated, from Tennessee, says this is in favor of Nancy Pelosi. Quote, she's good at the wealthier folk. Indeed, indeed. Now we go to the New York Times again. Ms. Pelosi, boasting that she was the biggest fundraiser in the country, still in office, dismissed suggestions that her time had passed. And she could not help but note that her critics did not mind benefiting from her financial prowess. That's right, we have a sick, corrupt system where the person who receives the most amount of legalized bribes is considered the leader. And every once in a while, somebody will take a pot shot at Nancy Pelosi, but they still live under the same system and they still like that she funnels some of those legalized bribes to them. So they're like, oh, she's Michael Jordan, she's wonderful, she shouldn't leave, she's good with the wealthier folks. And by the way, the guys I quoted are actually among the better guys. There are much worse guys out there. And so and they're like, oh, well, we might go from Nancy Pelosi to Crowley or to Steny Hoyer. Steny Hoyer isn't any better than Nancy Pelosi. He's just a weak sauce Nancy Pelosi. He's just someone who isn't quite as accomplished in getting quite as many bribes as Nancy Pelosi is. Again, the system allows for it, it's legal. I'm not saying that they're doing anything illegal. But when you take all this money and you brag about it, I don't know if you know this, it might leave the impression that you're among the elites and among the corrupt who have filled the swamp with their donors. So it doesn't mean that Trump is right. Trump has made the swamp much worse. But you're not helping by going down the same road and just losing those guys and go, well, they have more money, what could I do? You could change the system, that's what you could do. Oh, but that would be hard. Yeah, I guess we would need a master legislator for that. All right, and they explained the actual numbers. Since entering the House Democratic leadership in 2002, Ms. Pelosi has raised nearly $568 million for her party. Just in 2016 election cycle, she raised over $141 million. Yes, in the old days when nobody noticed the corruption or they had barely begun to notice the corruption, that would have been a big positive in your column. I'm not unaware of that, I understand that. And these days, we can see you. You can't hide behind TV anymore. There's something called the internet where we can see all these numbers. Okay. Beto O'Rourke, who's one of the good guys, he's a Democrat of Texas, does not take PAC money, does not take corporate money, and he's going to run against Ted Cruz very likely in the Senate in Texas. He says you can't tell people you're against big money, that you're fighting for the average American, and then spend so much of your time with PACs and corporate interests and the very wealthy. Common sense, that's why Bernie Sanders is the most popular politician in the country right now, but the Democratic establishment refuses to see it. And Beto O'Rourke makes a good point. He says if money were the critical factor, we'd be in the majority right now. If money were the critical factor in presidential races, Hillary Clinton would have won. Yes, Nancy Pelosi, you are right. You have raised more money than anyone else. What you don't realize though is that used to be an advantage, that is now a significant disadvantage. What it signals and cues the American people is that you're celebrating the corruption. You are not necessarily personally corrupt, but the system has been corrupted. So when you revel in that systemic corruption, people don't see, oh, well, that's a person that's fighting for us. They see a person fighting for their donors, and they're not wrong about that. Now, this is the last thing and very important. They asked Trump voters, and you're gonna say, who cares about Trump voters? No. These are people who voted for Barack Obama and then switched over and voted for Trump. So that's very important. Why did they switch over from Obama to Trump? Now, don't tell me it's race. That's tough to do in that particular category. Now, that might have been some segment of that population, but overall, these are guys who are discontented with the way things are going. They thought Obama was gonna bring them change, so they're not wedded to Republicans, they're not wedded to white people or evangelicals or anything like that. They just want change, but they felt like they didn't get it, so they went to Trump instead. So when they were asked, what does the Democratic Party stand for? The top three answers were the 1%, the status quo, and they're for the party, themselves, and the party. Unfortunately, I think they're correct. So if you can't see the problem that the Democratic Party has, and you can't see the systemic corruption, and you think you're doing a great job amongst all of these electoral losses and an absolute disaster on the policy front, then I'm afraid that you don't understand what's happening in this country at all, and you are definitely not the right person to lead the Democrats out of the wilderness, out of the losses, and actually beat Donald Trump and the Republican Party. You have to understand the voters and how much they hate this corruption in order to be able to beat the Republicans. And if you can't do that, and all you want to do is live in your bubble of hubris, then we got to ask you to step aside. Young Turks. If you like the Young Turks, you'll love Young Turks membership. TYTnetwork.com/join.